The volcanic moon of Chandra 9 was infamous throughout the galaxy as a hazardous wasteland, a place where few dared to venture. Its atmosphere was a toxic mix of volcanic ash and deadly radiation storms, making even the smallest misstep a potential death sentence. For the Glythari research team stationed there, every move was meticulously calculated, every precaution taken to ensure survival in this extreme environment. For years, the Glythari had braved this moon, fortified by their rigid protocols and specialized equipment. They had no room for error. Failure to respect Chandra 9's volatile environment was unthinkable. Then the humans arrived. The Glythari had heard rumors of Earth's resilience. A death world, as it was sometimes called, Earth-produced beings with remarkable survival capabilities. But nothing prepared the Glythari for what they would witness here on Chandra 9. The humans came with no elaborate suits, no complex shielding systems. Instead, they came equipped with duct tape, coffee, and an odd sort of confidence that seemed wholly unwarranted. Chief Researcher Talor, a Glythari with years of experience in some of the galaxy's harshest environments, could hardly believe his eyes. These humans, with their casual attitudes and minimal gear, were either the bravest or the most reckless beings he had ever encountered. What follows is the tale of how the humans defied logic, ignored protocol, and somehow, against all odds, managed to navigate one of the galaxy's deadliest moons. Hold on tight. This is a story of impossible survival, alien confusion, and a glimpse into the strange resilience that defines humanity. Chandra 9, the most inhospitable moon in the Glythari's planetary sector, was a place of constant simmering hostility. Its skies boiled with sulfuric clouds and unrelenting radiation storms, while its landscape was a labyrinth of molten rock rivers and volcanic ridges. The Glythari researchers stationed there had little margin for error. Every step they took was guided by rigorous protocol. Every breath taken outside the safety of the outpost was monitored. Lead researcher Talor had spent nearly 3 decades studying environments that defied conventional life. He was well versed in the dangers of Chandra 9 and had developed strict protocols to manage them. Every piece of equipment on the base was reinforced with triple-layered shielding, and no one set foot outside without a meticulously tested environmental suit. Talor's team knew the risks intimately. A single misstep could be fatal. For the Glythari, Chandra 9 was the epitome of danger, a place where every second required vigilance. To the Glythari, no planet could possibly rival the hazards of Chandra 9. Then came the humans. When Talor first heard that humans would be joining the research team, he found himself caught between curiosity and dread. He knew of humanity only from stories, their origin on Earth, a so-called death world, where natural disasters, aggressive ecosystems, and wildly fluctuating climates were the norm. To Talor, Earth was a place of myth, a land that sounded more like a cautionary tale than a habitable world. Talor's assistant Kaval shared his apprehension. Kaval was young, and like most of his generation, he had grown up with tales of humanity's recklessness. "Are they really coming without full shielding, sir?" he asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "Apparently so," Talor replied, though he himself found the idea absurd. He could hardly imagine anyone surviving on Chandra 9 without the full protective suits the Glythari deemed essential. "They're bringing... What did the memo say? Duct tape and coffee?" Talor repeated, bewildered. Kaval's face contorted in confusion. "Duct tape and coffee? Is that some sort of defensive tool?" Talor shook his head. "Apparently it's something humans use regularly. There must be more to it than we understand. I'll brief them myself when they arrive." When the human team finally arrived at the outpost, Talor and his team were ready. The Glythari scientists had rehearsed this introduction thoroughly, determined to communicate the gravity of Chandra 9's dangers. They anticipated fear, perhaps even awe from the humans, but what they encountered was unexpected. The humans strolled into the Glythari outpost with an ease that bordered on carelessness. They wore basic radiation shields, much lighter than the Glythari's protective gear. Each of them carried a large thermos, and a few had rolls of duct tape hanging from their belts, as if these items were standard issue. One of the humans, a middle-aged engineer named Sam, met Talor's scrutinizing gaze with a wide grin. "Ah, you must be Chief Researcher Talor. Nice to meet you. Great setup you've got here," Sam said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Talor, thrown off by Sam's informal tone, struggled to mask his bewilderment. "Welcome, humans. I trust you understand the precautions we've outlined?" Sam nodded, taking a sip from his thermos. "Yep, read through it. Pretty thorough stuff, but don't worry, we'll be fine. Chandra 9 is practically a vacation spot compared to some places we've worked." The Glythari scientists exchanged uneasy glances. Kaval, clearly concerned, whispered, "Did he just call Chandra 9 a vacation spot?" Talor nodded, uncertain whether to be insulted or simply confused. Turning back to Sam, he said, "I must emphasize that Chandra 9 is one of the most dangerous environments known to our species. Without appropriate shielding, radiation exposure alone could be fatal." Sam waved a dismissive hand. "We've got it covered. Radiation's not that big of a deal for us, and we've got duct tape if anything breaks." The Glythari's confusion deepened. "Duct tape?" Talor echoed, unable to hide his disbelief. Another human, a younger engineer named Maria, stepped forward. "Oh yeah, duct tape is essential for fieldwork. It can fix just about anything." Kaval looked from one human to the next, trying to find a hint of sarcasm, but the humans seemed entirely serious, even proud. He leaned toward Talor, murmuring, "Are they joking?" Talor could only shake his head, feeling a strange blend of horror and fascination. "I don't think so," he replied. "They seem genuine." As the briefing continued, the humans only added to the Glythari's bewilderment. When Talor described the contingency plan for emergency evacuations, the humans listened politely, but made little attempt to hide their skepticism. Sam raised an eyebrow when Talor mentioned the need for protective suits during potential volcanic eruptions. "Suits are all good, but in a pinch, you really just need to know where to run," he said with a chuckle. Talor felt his sense of reality bending. The human spoke with a confidence that defied logic, a casual disregard for safety that clashed with everything he had learned about survival. "Human resilience is remarkable," Talor admitted cautiously. "But do you not fear the dangers here?" Sam shrugged. "Nah, it's not that we're reckless. We just trust our ability to adapt. After all, we've survived some pretty wild things back on Earth. A little radiation? Volcanic activity? Just another day on the job?" To the Glythari, the words seemed like madness, but as they observed the humans, an unsettling realization dawned on them. These beings were truly different. Where the Glythari would see danger, humans saw a problem to be solved. Where the Glythari relied on caution, humans seemed to thrive on improvisation. Kaval summed it up best with a single, disbelieving question. "Sir, do humans know no fear?" Talor could only respond with silence. He had prepared for many things on Chandra 9, but he hadn't prepared for humanity's unique kind of resilience. In the days that followed, the Glythari would witness feats that defied their understanding, and their initial horror would slowly transform into a kind of reluctant admiration. Perhaps, just perhaps, these humans were indeed as extraordinary as the myth suggested. The days following the humans' arrival were filled with growing tension, bafflement, and, most surprising of all, admiration. Each morning, the Glythari scientists gathered in the observation chamber to review the humans' activities, which were broadcast through various surveillance points across the Chandra 9 facility. What they witnessed each day seemed to defy logic. From the start, the humans disregarded the Glythari's well-established safety routines. Instead of waiting for precise atmospheric readings, they'd head out with their basic shielding and an extra-large thermos of coffee in hand. To the humans, the Glythari's extensive safety checks seemed, as one of them put it, a bit much. Researcher Talor, always one for careful observation, made it his mission to understand these humans and their seemingly bizarre methods. He began his day in the central monitoring room, watching as the humans set up their own makeshift equipment, something he'd never seen before. Their stations were cluttered with an assortment of objects that didn't belong on any scientific outpost: insulated mugs, a staggering number of rolls of duct tape, and an alarming array of oddly shaped metal tools. Kaval, ever the skeptic, pointed to the clutter on the human station. "Sir, is that appropriate? Are they even using standard tools?" Talor observed silently, then let out a long sigh. Kaval, I have concluded that nothing humans do could be considered standard. Out on the field, the humans demonstrated the same casual attitude toward Chandra 9's hazards as they did inside the station. Radiation meters were only glanced at, and instead of adhering to the Glythari's strict two-person minimum outside the base rule, Sam could often be seen wandering off alone, coffee in one hand, data scanner in the other. On the third day, as Talor continued to monitor their activities, he received a call from Sam. The human's face appeared on the communication screen, framed by the barren volcanic landscape behind him. "Hey, Talor," Sam's voice was cheerful as ever. "Quick question. We're trying to fix a weird reading coming from one of the thermal vents about 3 clicks north of your coordinates. You got any advice?" Talor stared, momentarily stunned. "Sam, that area is marked as highly unstable. We specifically advised against going near the thermal vents without full shielding." Sam nodded, unconcerned. "Yeah, I know, but it's just a quick fix. Figured it'd save time if I just went and checked it out myself. I brought extra duct tape." Behind Talor, Kaval muttered, "This is madness." Talor cleared his throat. "Sam, please return to the outpost immediately. We can send a drone for initial assessment before deploying a full team." Sam, however, looked positively baffled. "A drone? No need, boss. We humans are hands-on types. Besides, the vent looks stable enough to me." With that, he adjusted his scarf and took another sip from his thermos before heading further into the restricted zone. Talor closed the transmission, exasperated. They truly have no regard for protocol. To his growing surprise, however, the humans did not merely survive these encounters, they seemed to thrive in the chaos. Hours after the call, Sam returned to the outpost, not only unharmed, but with a series of precise data logs that detailed the thermal vents activity far beyond what the drones had managed to collect in months. Over the following days, Talor and his team observed the humans taking increasingly unconventional approaches. When a power relay malfunctioned, the humans patched it with layers of duct tape and somehow a piece of one of their thermal blankets. Kaval observed the repair in stunned silence. "Sir, they're using household items?" Talor could only shake his head in disbelief. It would appear so. The repair, though highly unorthodox, held. And soon, the Glythari began to notice that these human fixes were often faster and more durable than anything they'd seen before. One evening, after another successful day in the field, Sam joined Talor in the main control room, where the Glythari was reviewing atmospheric scans. Sam looked over Talor's shoulder, giving a low whistle. "Wow, that's a serious storm coming in," he remarked, sipping his ever-present thermos. Talor glanced at Sam with a mixture of frustration and fascination. "Yes, a Category 5 radiation storm. Our protocols dictate an immediate lockdown." Sam shrugged. "Lockdown? I was planning on fixing up the auxiliary generator during the storm. Keeps the mind busy, you know." Talor felt a familiar sense of exasperation creeping in. "Sam, a Category 5 storm can irradiate any life form within a 5-kilometer radius. This is not a matter to take lightly." Sam chuckled. "Hey, we survived hurricanes back on Earth, right? Same thing, more or less." Talor frowned, his frustration reaching a boiling point. "Sam, this is not Earth. You cannot compare a terrestrial storm to an interstellar radiation event." "Look, Talor," Sam replied with a grin, "I appreciate the concern, but we're wired differently. Earth's taught us to keep moving no matter what's thrown at us. I think we'll manage." Kaval, overhearing, finally broke his silence. "Is there no limit to what you humans consider survivable?" Sam paused, considering Kaval's question carefully. "Not really. I mean, it's not about bravery or anything. It's just that we're used to, well, patching things up and moving forward." Kaval shook his head, his confusion deepening. "But why not follow protocol? Why not take every precaution?" Sam thought for a moment, then grinned. "Well, Kaval, sometimes the quickest way forward is just to make do with what you've got." He patted his thermos. "And sometimes that's a whole lot of coffee." The Glythari couldn't comprehend it. They had spent centuries developing their protocols, believing that only with caution and precision could they survive extreme environments. But here were humans, these strange, reckless creatures, solving problems and surviving not by meticulous planning, but by sheer adaptability. The following day, the Glythari witnessed yet another spectacle of human resilience. A sudden malfunction in the outpost's cooling system sent temperatures soaring, causing the alien scientists to initiate an immediate evacuation of the core laboratory. But as they scrambled to the exits, the humans remained calmly inside, studying the overheating system as though it were merely an inconvenience. "Don't worry," Maria, one of the human engineers, shouted to the panicking Glythari. "We'll just reroute this and cool it down manually. It's a quick fix." Caval, watching through the observation window, looked horrified. "Manually? They'll burn themselves alive." But minutes later, the humans emerged from the lab, unscathed and looking satisfied, having managed to stabilize the system without any major damage. Talor, who had watched the entire episode unfold, could barely believe his eyes. These humans had treated a catastrophic failure like a minor setback, handled it with ease, and walked away as if nothing unusual had happened. He approached Sam, still dumbfounded. How did you do that? Did you not fear for your lives?" Sam shrugged, giving Talor a knowing smile. "Not really. We humans have a knack for handling a little heat." As the days passed, the Glythari found themselves reluctantly admiring the humans. Where the Glythari were paralyzed by protocol, humans were driven by the desire to get things done. Talor and his team began to take notes, studying the humans as they worked, and began to ask themselves if there might be wisdom hidden in this madness. Talor often caught Caval watching the humans with a newfound respect. One evening, he turned to Talor, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Perhaps, Chief, there's something we can learn from these humans. Their methods may be unorthodox, but they are undeniably effective." It was a sentiment Talor had been grappling with himself. He nodded, watching as Sam, Maria, and the other humans laughed and talked around the control room, seemingly oblivious to the dangers that surrounded them. Talor's voice was barely a whisper, more to himself than to anyone else. "Perhaps, but I still don't understand how they can face such hazards with a smile." Caval leaned forward, his gaze serious. "Maybe it's simply in their nature." The Glythari's world had been one of rigid discipline and caution. To them, every action, every moment was calculated for survival. But these humans had a different approach, a confidence, a resilience that defied explanation. They were teaching the Glythari something invaluable, something that went beyond protocols and procedures. The more they observed, the more the Glythari realized that these humans, these Deathworlders, possessed a kind of strength that was, perhaps, beyond their own. The first true test of the human team's resilience came unexpectedly, during what the Glythari had planned as a routine equipment maintenance operation. All Glythari activities adhered to strict protocols, with meticulous schedules for checking every piece of machinery and system that kept them alive on Chandra 9. Today, it was the auxiliary reactor's turn for an inspection, a process that usually took several hours under Glythari standards. Sam and Maria were both on shift, along with a junior human technician, Leo. The Glythari observed with uneasy fascination as the humans approached the reactor room without any of the usual pre-checks or safety briefings that the Glythari would have spent hours conducting. Talor and Caval watched through the observation feed, their unease growing. Talor activated the comms. "Human engineers, I must remind you, proximity to the auxiliary reactor without full radiation shielding could result in dangerous exposure. I advise waiting until we complete our environmental assessments." Sam chuckled, waving off Talor's concerns. "We've been around a few reactors in our time, Chief. Don't worry, we'll be fine. Just need to make a quick patch job." Caval, standing beside Talor, glanced at him with alarm. "A patch job? Are they serious?" Sam, sensing the Glythari's anxiety, looked up at the nearest observation camera with a reassuring smile. "Relax, Doc. We've got this. Just a little duct tape and we're golden." But before Talor could protest further, an unexpected problem emerged. The auxiliary reactor's core began emitting a high-pitched alarm, followed by a flashing indicator on the control panel. Caval's eyes widened. "Sir, radiation levels in the core are spiking." Sam looked up, checking his own radiation meter, which he had clipped to his belt in a casual manner. Instead of panicking, he let out a low whistle. "Wow, that's a bit high. Might want to back up a step, Leo." Leo nodded, taking a half step back as he continued examining the reactor with a calm expression. "We'll just slap some shielding on it, that'll do the trick." Talor could barely contain his disbelief. You cannot simply slap some shielding onto a critical reactor core." But to his horror, that was precisely what the humans intended to do. Sam retrieved a roll of heavy-duty duct tape from his utility belt and handed it to Maria, who began unwinding it with a practiced, almost casual precision. They started layering it over a section of exposed wiring that seemed to be causing the radiation leak. Cavall gasped, gripping the edge of the control panel in horror. "They're covering a radiation leak with tape?" Talor's heart raced as he watched, a sense of helplessness flooding over him. But he knew that even if he ordered the humans out, they wouldn't listen. They were committed to this patch job, oblivious to the Glythari's terror. Moments later, the alarm ceased. The humans stepped back, admiring their work. Sam gave the reactor a firm pat, as if congratulating it. "See? Good as new." Cavall stared at the reactor, as if expecting it to explode at any moment. "Sir, how did that work?" Talor could only shake his head. "I don't know, Cavall. I simply don't know. This was only the beginning." Word of the humans' unconventional methods began to spread among the Glythari staff. Stories circulated of the humans who fix reactors with tape, and it wasn't long before other departments began requesting their assistance for similarly unfixable problems. One day, as a particularly dangerous volcanic storm approached, the main environmental control system experienced a catastrophic failure. For the Glythari, this was nothing short of a crisis. The system controlled the outpost's internal atmosphere, keeping out toxic gases and maintaining breathable air. Without it, the entire facility would be compromised within hours. The Glythari immediately prepared for a full shutdown and emergency evacuation. But before they could enact their protocols, Sam and his team arrived, having heard the alarms. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Sam said, waving his hands. "What's with all the panic? What's going on?" Talor stepped forward, his voice tense. "The environmental control system has failed. We're initiating a full shutdown to prevent a catastrophic breach." Sam frowned, scratching his head. "Shutdown? That could take hours, and by then the storm will have hit. Let us take a look first." Talor shook his head. "No, Sam, this is a serious malfunction. If the atmospheric integrity fails—" "We know the risks," Maria interjected, giving Talor a reassuring nod. "We've handled environmental system failures before. Just give us 15 minutes. Cavall stepped forward, alarmed. 15 minutes? That's absurd. Even with our most advanced tools, it would take at least 2 hours to fully assess the damage. Leo grinned. "We're not looking to assess, buddy. We're looking to fix." Without waiting for permission, the humans moved toward the control system, analyzing the faulty components with quick, practiced movements. Talor watched as they worked, their hands moving over the machinery with a confidence that defied reason. They patched circuits, rerouted energy, and used their ubiquitous duct tape to secure a loose panel. Within minutes, the alarm stopped, and the atmospheric readings began to stabilize. The Glythari scientist watched, dumbfounded, as the humans stepped back, dusting off their hands. "See, good as new," Maria said with a smile, as if they had just fixed a leaky faucet instead of preventing a total atmospheric breach. Cavall shook his head, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. I cannot understand how you did that. Are all humans this resourceful?" Sam grinned. "Resourceful? We're just good at making do with what we've got." Talor studied the humans, a profound sense of respect beginning to replace his initial skepticism. "And do you feel no fear in such situations?" Sam's smile softened. "Oh, we feel fear. It's just that back on Earth we learned a little fear can be useful, keeps us sharp, but you can't let it stop you from doing what needs to be done." This simple explanation left the Glythari with more questions than answers. What was it about these humans that allowed them to face disaster with such nonchalance? And yet, despite the humans' calm exterior, the Glythari couldn't deny the results. These Deathworlders, with their duct tape and coffee-fueled resolve, were accomplishing feats that defied all logic. As if to test the limits of the humans' resolve, disaster struck again the following day. A communication relay failed, cutting off all contact between the outpost and the Glythari command center. For the Glythari, this was unthinkable. Without direct orders and guidance, their protocols were rendered ineffective. Talor had no way of knowing if help was on the way, or if they were completely on their own. Kaval turned to Talor, his voice laced with fear. "Sir, what do we do? Our protocols don't cover a full communications failure in an active volcanic storm." Before Talor could respond, Sam stepped forward. "So no one's coming to help, huh? Guess it's up to us." He gave Talor a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Chief, we've handled worse." Ignoring the Glythari's looks of horror, the humans set to work on the broken relay, improvising with whatever parts and materials they could find. When they ran out of proper tools, Leo fashioned makeshift ones out of scrap metal. When a critical wire snapped, Maria spliced it together using a strand from her own equipment pack. Kaval observed their work with mounting anxiety. "Is this wise?" he asked Talor, who seemed just as unsure. Talor could only watch as the humans defied every rule, every precaution, every sense of reason he had been taught. But what was even more incredible was that their methods seemed to work. Within an hour, the relay was operational again. The communication link was re-established, and the outpost systems were once again running smoothly. The humans gathered around, clearly pleased with their work, as though they had just completed a simple repair rather than a critical fix in a life-or-death situation. Turning to the Glythari scientists, Sam offered a cheerful thumbs up. "All good, folks. Crisis averted." Talor, speechless, could only nod. He had never seen anything like it. These humans, these Deathworlders, were operating on a level that defied explanation. They faced problems head-on, without hesitation, solving them through a combination of resourcefulness, adaptability, and sheer grit. As the humans moved to their next task, Kaval turned to Talor, his voice filled with a sense of awe he couldn't hide. "Sir, these humans, they are truly remarkable." Talor nodded slowly, a newfound respect dawning in his eyes. "Yes, Kaval. Perhaps there is more to them than we first realized. Perhaps they have something to teach us about survival." Days turned into weeks, and the Glythari scientists found themselves in a constant state of astonishment as they continued observing the human team. Every task the humans approached seemed to defy the Glythari's understanding of safety, logic, and even sanity. And yet, the humans succeeded time and time again, leaving the Glythari questioning everything they had ever known. Talor, once resolute in his faith in protocol and caution, began to feel a deep, unsettling doubt creeping into his mind. For years he had adhered to strict rules, trusting that survival depended on careful planning and calculated actions. But these humans were rewriting every rule he had ever followed. One evening, Talor sat in the observation deck, staring out over the volatile landscape of Chandra 9. The volcanic ridges glowed faintly in the distance, and a new radiation storm was brewing on the horizon. Normally, he would feel a sense of calm, knowing the protocols were in place to protect the outpost. But now he wasn't so sure. Kaval joined him, sensing the tension in his superior's posture. "Sir, are you all right?" Talor didn't respond immediately. He was too engrossed in his thoughts, replaying the moments he'd witnessed over the past weeks. The humans fixing reactors with duct tape, walking through high radiation zones with little more than a shrug, facing each catastrophe with a confidence that bordered on recklessness. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Kaval, do you ever wonder if we've been wrong?" Kaval looked at him, startled. "Wrong, sir? About what?" Talor gestured toward the humans, who were gathered in the workshop laughing and talking as they prepared for another round of maintenance on the outpost's equipment. About survival, about what it takes to endure in places like this. Kaval was silent, considering his words. "We've always believed that survival depended on caution, on strict adherence to safety protocols and careful planning." Talor nodded. "Yes, that is what we have been taught. And yet these humans survive by a completely different set of rules. They face dangers we would never consider, with tools and methods that seem primitive. and somehow they succeed. Cavall followed Talor's gaze, watching the humans with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Perhaps they are simply different from us. They come from a world that has forced them to adapt in ways we can hardly imagine. Talor leaned forward, his expression intense. But what if they are not just different, Cavall? What if they are better adapted? What if our approach to survival has been limited all along? The words hung heavily in the air, and Cavall shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsettled. You mean to say that all our protocols, all our preparations, might not be enough? Talor hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, watching these humans has made me question if perhaps our rigid adherence to caution has actually made us weaker. Cavall stared at Talor, struggling to process the implications of his words. For the Glythari, survival had always been about avoiding risk, about creating layers of safety to shield themselves from the dangers of the universe. To question that core belief was almost unthinkable, and as the Glythari watched, they couldn't deny the results. The humans were thriving, even in this hostile environment. The breaking point came one night during a particularly severe volcanic storm. The outpost's radiation shields were failing, and the Glythari scientists were on the verge of panic. The protocols were clear. If the shields fell below a critical threshold, they were to retreat to the inner sanctum and wait for the storm to pass. No one was to risk exposure. But as the alarms blared and the Glythari hurried to secure themselves, the humans were nowhere to be found. Talor, alarmed, searched the facility until he found Sam and Maria working on the primary shield generator in the reactor room, sweat pouring down their faces as they battled to keep the system stable. "What are you doing?" Talor shouted over the roar of the storm. "You need to get to safety." Sam didn't look up, his hands busy rewiring a malfunctioning circuit. "If we don't stabilize this generator, the shields are going to collapse entirely. We're just buying time, Chief." Talor felt his stomach drop. "But the risk. If you stay here, you could be exposed to lethal radiation." Maria gave him a quick, reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Doc, we've got this. Besides, what's a little radiation? Comes with the territory." Talor could hardly believe what he was hearing. These humans were willing to sacrifice their safety, perhaps even their lives, to save the outpost. It was an act of selflessness and courage that went beyond his understanding. He watched in awe as they worked, their faces determined, their hands steady. They showed no signs of fear, no hesitation. For them, it was simply another problem to be solved, another crisis to be handled. And in that moment, Talor realized something profound. These humans were not merely surviving, they were thriving. They had faced death so many times that they no longer feared it. Instead, they had learned to live with it, to adapt and persevere no matter the odds, and in doing so, they had found a strength that the Glythari could only dream of. When the storm finally subsided, the humans had successfully stabilized the shields, and the outpost was safe once more. But Talor knew that something had changed, not just in the outpost but within himself. In the days that followed, Talor couldn't stop thinking about what he had witnessed. The humans had risked their lives to protect the outpost, without hesitation, without fear. It was an act that defied every Glythari belief about survival, and yet, it made a strange kind of sense. He began to wonder if perhaps the Glythari's rigid adherence to safety protocols had made them too cautious, too afraid of taking risks. Perhaps in their quest for survival, they had lost sight of something essential, the ability to adapt, to face danger head-on, to embrace the unknown. Cavall noticed Talor's introspective mood and approached him one evening. "Sir, you've been different since the storm. Are you still troubled by the humans?" Talor nodded slowly. "Yes, Cavall. They have made me question everything I thought I knew about survival." Cavall's gaze softened. "I understand, sir. They are unlike any species we have encountered, but surely their methods are simply unique to their kind?" Talor shook his head. "I don't think so, Cavall. I think there is a lesson in their methods, a lesson we have been too afraid to learn. They face each challenge without hesitation, without fear, and they succeed because they are willing to adapt, to change their approach as the situation demands." Caval fell silent, clearly struggling with the implications of Talor's words. For the Glythari, survival had always been about avoiding risk, about following strict protocols. But now they were being forced to confront the possibility that there might be another way. Talor continued, his voice quiet but firm. Perhaps we too must learn to adapt. Perhaps we must find the courage to face the unknown, to take risks when necessary, to trust in our own resilience. Caval looked at him, a spark of understanding dawning in his eyes. You mean to think like the humans? Talor nodded. Yes, Caval, to think like the humans. The humans, of course, had no idea of the impact they were having on the Glythari. To them, it was just another assignment, another set of challenges to tackle. They continued their work with the same cheerful resilience, facing each day with a mixture of confidence and humor. But for the Glythari, the experience was nothing short of transformative. They began to question their own protocols, to wonder if perhaps they had been too cautious, too rigid in their approach to survival. And slowly, they started to adopt some of the humans' methods. Small changes at first, but significant nonetheless. They began to improvise, to take calculated risks, to trust in their own abilities rather than relying solely on protocols. And as they did, they found a new strength within themselves, a strength they hadn't known they possessed. One day, as Sam and Talor were reviewing a new maintenance plan, Sam glanced over at Talor, a grin on his face. You know, Doc, you Glythari are starting to loosen up a bit. I like it. Talor chuckled, feeling a sense of camaraderie he had never expected. Perhaps we've learned something from you humans after all. Sam raised his thermos in a mock toast. Here's to duct tape and coffee, the true essentials of survival. Talor raised an imaginary glass, feeling an uncharacteristic sense of warmth and humor. To duct tape and coffee, he echoed. And in that moment, Talor understood that the humans had given them more than just survival tips. They had given them a new perspective, a new way of seeing the world. They had taught the Glythari that sometimes survival wasn't just about caution. Sometimes it was about courage, adaptability, and the willingness to face the unknown with a smile. The climax came swiftly, like a nightmare that unfolded with unstoppable force. The outpost systems were strained after weeks of constant volcanic storms and high radiation levels. And even the human fixes and patch jobs were starting to falter under the relentless pressure. Then the worst-case scenario struck. A powerful seismic event rocked the volcanic moon, sending tremors through the outpost and causing extensive structural damage. Alarms blared as walls and equipment shook, cracks forming along the floor, while sparks flew from overloaded circuits. Talor stumbled, clutching a nearby console for support. His mind raced, trying to process the unfolding disaster. The outpost's structural integrity was failing, and without immediate repairs, they would all be buried alive under tons of volcanic debris. Caval, wide-eyed with fear, turned to Talor. Sir, our protocols, there's no plan for this level of seismic activity. The structure wasn't designed for such forces. Talor knew the truth. The Glythari's best calculations hadn't accounted for an event of this magnitude. Caval, if we follow the usual protocols, we won't survive this, he said, his voice filled with a new sense of resolve. As Talor's words sank in, the humans arrived, surveying the damage with grim determination. Sam, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a steely focus, took in the chaos with a practiced eye. Right, folks, Sam said, addressing both the Glythari and his own team. This is bad, but we're not out of options yet. Talor approached him, his voice tense. Sam, the outpost's structural stability is compromised. If we don't evacuate, Sam shook his head. Evacuation is not going to cut it. If we don't reinforce this place fast, there won't be anything left to come back to. He gestured to the humans, who had already begun unpacking their improvised repair kits. We're going to need everyone's help on this, Glythari included. Caval looked appalled. You want us to fix this? With duct tape and spare parts? Sam's gaze was steady, his voice unwavering. Look, Caval, we don't have time to debate. We need hands and we need them now. It's either this or we're all toast. Talor, feeling the weight of the moment, turned to his team, his eyes filled with a resolve they had never seen before. Glythari, we will follow the humans' lead. Prepare to adapt as necessary. It was a decision that went against every protocol, every rule the Glythari had followed for generations. But they had no choice. Together, humans and Glythari moved through the facility, working in tandem as they tackled the growing list of critical failures. The first obstacle was the structural integrity of the main support beams, which had cracked under the pressure of the seismic waves. Sam led the charge, wielding metal braces and duct tape with a speed and precision that left the Glythari in awe. These beams won't hold without reinforcement, Sam explained, gesturing for Talor to join him. We're going to need to prop them up temporarily while we patch the cracks. Talor stared at the haphazard solution, his mind racing. Everything in him screamed that this approach was reckless, borderline insane. But there was no time for hesitation. With a nod, he grabbed a set of metal brackets and worked alongside Sam, attaching braces and securing them with layers of duct tape. Kaval and the other Glythari followed suit, their hands trembling at first, but gradually gaining confidence as they realized the humans' method, while unconventional, was effective. For the first time, they were moving without hesitation, pushing aside their fears and embracing the humans' fearless approach. With the beams temporarily stabilized, they moved to the next issue, a critical reactor coolant leak that threatened to trigger a catastrophic meltdown. The Glythari scientists would have normally shut down the reactor entirely, but the humans insisted that they could fix it on the fly. Maria led the effort, her face streaked with sweat as she instructed the Glythari team. Listen, we're going to reroute the coolant manually. It's not pretty, but it'll buy us time. Kaval looked horrified. Manually reroute the coolant? That's incredibly dangerous. Maria smirked, grabbing a roll of insulated tubing. Welcome to human engineering, my friend. Sometimes you've got to take a little risk. With her guidance, the Glythari scientists worked alongside the humans, replacing ruptured coolant lines and sealing leaks with improvised patches. Every second felt like an eternity, but as the minutes ticked by, they began to see results. The temperature gauge began to stabilize, and the risk of meltdown slowly receded. For the first time, the Glythari felt a glimmer of hope. They were learning to work with the humans, to adapt to their chaotic, resourceful methods, and it was working. But just as they stabilized the reactor, another crisis struck. A massive fissure had opened in the eastern wing, and toxic gases were seeping into the outpost. The environmental control system was already strained, and now it was failing under the pressure. Talor's instincts told him that they should evacuate, but he forced himself to ignore his ingrained caution. We'll fix this, he said, his voice steady, despite the chaos around him. Sam slapped him on the back, a proud grin on his face. That's the spirit, Chief. Now let's get to it. The humans and Glythari worked together to seal the fissure, using a combination of metal sheets and adhesive compounds. The humans worked with a level of focus and intensity that was contagious, and soon the Glythari found themselves working with a similar energy, driven not by fear, but by determination. With every makeshift repair, every patch and brace, the Glythari felt their old beliefs crumbling. They had spent their lives relying on protocols, on safety measures that kept them safe but restricted them. Now they were learning to embrace uncertainty, to face danger head-on, just as the humans did. As the final piece of the fissure patch was secured, Talor looked around at his team. He saw something he had never seen before, a fierce, almost reckless resolve. They were no longer afraid, they were no longer bound by their old limitations, and it was the humans who had shown them the way. The last test came when the primary reactor, overworked and strained from weeks of constant use, began to overload. The reactor was the heart of the outpost, powering everything from the environmental controls to the shield generators. If it failed, the entire facility would be lost. Talor felt a familiar pang of fear, but he pushed it aside. We can do this, he said, looking to Sam and the humans. Tell us what to do. Sam nodded, his expression grim. We're going to need to divert the energy manually. It's going to be risky, but it's our only shot. Without hesitation, Talor and the Glythari followed the humans to the reactor room, where they began the delicate, dangerous task of rerouting the energy flow. Sparks flew, and the air was thick with tension, but no one hesitated. They worked as a team, each one focused and determined. Maria monitored the readings, her voice steady despite the rising pressure. "We've only got a few seconds before the reactor hits critical. Everyone, stay sharp." The final adjustments were made, and as the reactor stabilized, a collective sigh of relief washed over them. They had done it. They had saved the outpost together. Talor looked around at his team, his heart filled with a sense of pride he had never felt before. They had faced impossible odds, and they had survived, not by following protocols, but by embracing the resilience and adaptability that the humans had shown them. As the dust settled, Sam turned to Talor, his usual grin returning. "Not bad for a bunch of protocol guys, huh?" Talor laughed, a sound that surprised even himself. "Not bad at all. I think we've learned more from you humans than we ever could have imagined." Caval stepped forward, his face reflecting a similar transformation. "Perhaps in adapting, we have become something stronger, something more capable than we ever realized." Sam nodded, his voice filled with pride. "That's the thing about humans, Doc. We adapt, we survive, and we're happy to share that with anyone willing to learn." The Glythari scientists looked at the humans, and for the first time, they felt not just respect, but a deep sense of camaraderie. They were no longer two separate teams. They were a united force, bound by the trials they had faced together. As they stood in the reactor room, surrounded by the aftermath of their battle, Talor felt a strange sense of hope. The outpost was safe, the crisis averted, but more importantly, they had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever the universe might throw at them. Perhaps, Talor mused, this is the beginning of a new way for the Glythari, a way inspired by the resilience and courage of humanity. Sam raised his thermos in a toast, his grin infectious, to resilience, courage, and a little duct tape. The Glythari joined in, their voices filled with newfound strength and pride. For the first time, they had embraced the unknown, and they had emerged victorious. And as they celebrated their survival, Talor knew that this was only the beginning of their journey, a journey made possible by the humans who had taught them what it truly meant to live. The aftermath of the crisis left the outpost in a rare moment of quiet. For the first time in weeks, the alarms were silent, and the hum of the machinery was steady and reassuring. The outpost had survived against impossible odds, thanks to the collaboration between humans and Glythari. Yet, the effects of what had happened ran deeper than mere repairs and patch jobs. As the dust settled, the Glythari gathered in the main hall, joined by the human team, for a debriefing that felt more like a reflection. There was an unspoken understanding among them, a shared respect that went beyond words. Talor stood at the head of the gathering, his usually stoic expression softened by a mixture of relief and gratitude. He looked over his team, then at the humans, who were casually sipping their coffee and looking as if the past few days had been nothing more than routine. He could hardly believe these humans had faced death so many times and treated it like just another problem to solve. Clearing his throat, Talor spoke, his voice carrying a weight that resonated through the room. "Today, we have witnessed something profound. We have learned that survival is not only about caution and planning, but also about courage and adaptability." He paused, his gaze shifting to Sam and his team. "And we have you humans to thank for showing us that." Sam raised his thermos in a gesture of camaraderie, a warm smile on his face. "Hey, we were just doing what we do best, no biggie." Caval, who had been silent for most of the gathering, finally spoke up, his voice filled with wonder. "But it is a big deal, Sam. You humans, you see risk not as something to fear, but as something to embrace. That is inspiring." The humans exchanged glances, clearly amused. Maria shrugged, giving a playful wink. "We're just stubborn. You put a challenge in front of us and we're going to find a way around it, even if that means breaking a few rules." The Glythari couldn't help but smile. For them, rules had been the foundation of their existence, a rigid structure that defined every action, every decision. But now they were beginning to understand that there was more to survival than following protocols. The humans had shown them that sometimes to truly live, one had to be willing to bend the rules, to face the unknown with open eyes and an unbreakable spirit. As the meeting concluded, Talor approached Sam privately, a contemplative look on his face. "I must admit, Sam, you and your team have changed us. I don't think we can go back to the way we were before." Sam smiled, clapping Talor on the shoulder. "That's the thing about change, Chief. Once you start down that path, there's no going back. But trust me, it's a good thing. You Glythari have got a whole lot more grit than you give yourselves credit for." Talor nodded, feeling a sense of pride and gratitude he hadn't expected. "Thank you, Sam. You've given us a new way of looking at the universe." Sam chuckled, "Happy to help. And hey, if you ever need a refresher in duct tape engineering, just give us a call." Talor laughed, a genuine hearty sound that surprised even himself. "I just might take you up on that offer." As they shook hands, Talor felt a deep sense of kinship with these humans, a bond forged not through similarity, but through shared struggle and newfound understanding. In the days that followed, the Glythari began implementing changes inspired by the humans' influence. Their approach to safety remained, but there was a newfound flexibility, a willingness to adapt that hadn't existed before. They started making decisions with a blend of caution and courage, recognizing that sometimes survival meant facing risks head-on. The humans, for their part, continued to treat each day with the same casual resilience they had shown from the start. They helped the Glythari install new systems, shared their improvised techniques, and even left behind a supply of duct tape as a souvenir. One evening, as they gathered for a final meal before the humans' departure, Talor raised a glass, his voice filled with sincerity. "To our human friends who have shown us what it means to be truly resilient." Sam raised his thermos in response. "To the Glythari, who've got way more backbone than they realize." The room erupted in laughter and applause, and for that one evening, they were not humans and Glythari, but a single team, bound by a shared experience that transcended species. As the humans prepared to depart, Talor and his team gathered to bid them farewell. There was an unmistakable sense of camaraderie in the air, a bond that only those who had faced life and death together could understand. Before boarding the shuttle, Maria turned to Caval, handing him a small roll of duct tape. "Just in case," she said with a wink. Caval took it, his face a mixture of humor and gratitude. "Thank you, Maria. I'll keep it close." Sam gave Talor a final handshake, his grip firm and steady. "Remember, Chief, if things ever get rough out here, don't be afraid to get a little creative." Talor smiled, feeling a deep sense of respect and admiration for these humans. "Thank you, Sam. I won't forget." As the shuttle lifted off, the Glythari watched their human friends disappear into the sky, a sense of bittersweet pride settling over them. They had been changed, forever altered by the experience, and as they returned to the outpost, they carried with them the lessons of courage, adaptability, and resilience that the humans had taught them. In the months that followed, the Glythari's approach to their work continued to evolve. They began taking calculated risks, exploring methods and ideas that once would have been dismissed as reckless. And as they did, they discovered a newfound strength, a strength born not of caution, but of adaptability and courage. Talor, in particular, found himself embracing challenges he once would have avoided. He led his team with a balance of caution and boldness, and the results were remarkable. The Glythari had become more resilient, more capable, and more united than ever before. Caval, reflecting on the changes, approached Talor one day with a thoughtful expression. "Sir, do you think the humans would be proud of us?" Talor smiled, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "I think they would, Caval. We've become stronger because of them. And I believe that is exactly what they wanted for us." They stood together, looking out over the volatile landscape of Chandra 9, a landscape that no longer felt as intimidating as it once had. For they now carried with them a new strength, a strength that had been awakened by their human friends. One evening, as Talor reviewed a report in his office, he noticed a small roll of duct tape that Maria had left behind. He picked it up, feeling a surge of fondness and gratitude. This simple item, so ordinary and unremarkable, had come to symbolize something profound, the resilience and adaptability that humanity had shared with them. Smiling to himself, Talor placed the duct tape on his desk, a reminder of the lessons they had learned and the bond they had formed. It was a small token, but it held a world of meaning, and as he looked out at the stars, Talor knew that they would never be the same. They had become stronger, braver, and more adaptable, and they owed it all to the humans who had shown them what it truly meant to survive. They would remember the humans not just as colleagues but as friends, as allies who had left an indelible mark on their lives. And whenever a new challenge arose, whenever they faced a situation that seemed impossible, the Glythari would remember the words of their human friends. Sometimes, you just have to make do with what you've got. It was a simple lesson, but one that had changed them forever. As they ventured into the future, the Glythari carried with them the spirit of resilience and adaptability that the humans had taught them. They were no longer bound by fear, no longer limited by rigid protocols. They had learned to embrace the unknown, to face challenges head-on, and to survive with courage and ingenuity. And in this new era of strength and unity, the Glythari honored the legacy of the humans who had shown them what it truly meant to be alive. Months had passed since the humans departed from Chandra 9, but their presence lingered like an echo through the halls of the Glythari outpost. Every creak of a freshly patched wall, every improvised repair, and every stray roll of duct tape served as a reminder of the unforgettable journey they had shared. Life on Chandra 9 resumed its rhythm, yet it was different in subtle, profound ways. The Glythari had become more confident, more willing to step beyond the boundaries of their traditional protocols. They began to see themselves not as fragile beings trapped in a hostile environment, but as adaptable, resilient explorers of the unknown. Talor, now regarded as a hero among his people, continued leading the team with the balance of caution and boldness he had learned from the humans. The changes he had enacted were bearing fruit. Repairs were completed faster, challenges faced with creativity and courage. The outpost had evolved into a beacon of strength, a place where survival was no longer about mere endurance, but about thriving against all odds. One day, a message arrived from the Glythari High Council. They had heard rumors of the humans' unconventional methods and were intrigued by the remarkable adaptability Talor and his team had displayed. The council requested a detailed report on the humans' influence, curious about the duct tape engineering and resilience that had transformed the Chandra 9 outpost. Talor spent hours crafting his response, recounting the humans' fearless approach, their humor, and their willingness to face any challenge with a cup of coffee in one hand and a roll of duct tape in the other. He explained how, in embracing risk, his team had discovered a strength that went beyond protocols and precautions, a strength rooted in adaptability and courage. The council's reply was swift and unexpected. They expressed a desire to learn from the humans themselves. They wanted to understand this Deathworlder mindset, to invite human consultants to work with Glythari teams across the galaxy. It was a bold and unprecedented move, and Talor felt a surge of pride, knowing that his team's experience had sparked a revolution in Glythari thinking. Back on Earth, Sam, Maria, and the rest of the human team had returned to their usual routines, sharing stories of their time on Chandra 9 with friends and colleagues. They often laughed about the Glythari's initial shock at their unconventional methods, about the priceless expressions when they'd first introduced the concept of duct tape fixes. "You had to be there," Sam would say, grinning as he recounted their adventures. "You haven't lived until you've seen an alien watch you patch a reactor with duct tape." But beyond the humor, there was a deep respect and fondness for the Glythari. The humans had grown to admire their cautious, meticulous ways, and they often wondered how their Glythari friends were faring, hoping they had taken some lessons to heart. One evening, as Sam was finishing up a report in his workshop, a message came through from Chandra 9. It was from Talor, a brief but heartfelt note that read, "Thank you, Sam. Your lessons have changed us. The Glythari are no longer the same because of you. You are always welcome here, should you ever wish to return." Sam smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond pride. They had left more than just memories on Chandra 9. They had left a legacy. And in a way, the Glythari had given them something precious in return, The knowledge that even across the vastness of space, connections could be formed, bonds created, and minds opened. Back on Chandra 9, Talor held his own private ritual each evening. On his desk sat the small roll of duct tape Maria had given him, a symbol of everything they had endured, learned, and become. Sometimes he would reach for it, feeling its cool surface, and he'd be reminded of the humans' indomitable spirit, their ability to make the impossible possible. One evening, as he sat alone in his office, he felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet certainty that the Glythari would never be the same. They had been given a gift, a new way of seeing themselves and the universe around them, and they would carry that gift forward, sharing it with future generations. As Talor looked out over the barren landscape of Chandra 9, with its turbulent skies and volatile ridges, he felt not fear, but a profound appreciation. This world was no longer just a hostile environment. It was a proving ground, a place where resilience was forged and where life could find a way against all odds. In his final report to the High Council, Talor wrote a simple but powerful reflection. The humans have taught us that survival is not merely about avoiding risk, but about embracing it. To survive is to adapt, to face the unknown with courage, and to believe that there is always a way forward. We, the Glythari, have learned to thrive because of them. He sent the report with a sense of closure, knowing that the lessons of Chandra 9 would echo through Glythari society for generations to come. And as the years passed, the story of the humans on Chandra 9 became a cherished legend among the Glythari. They told tales of the Deathworlders who had arrived with strange tools and fearless spirits, who had faced danger with laughter and ingenuity, and who had taught the Glythari that true strength came not from caution, but from the courage to embrace the unknown. And in labs and workshops across the Glythari homeworld, small rolls of duct tape began to appear, quietly passed down, as symbols of resilience, adaptability, and the enduring bond between two vastly different species. In the hearts of the Glythari, the humans lived on, not just as colleagues or friends, but as teachers, as allies, and as a testament to the boundless potential of life in the universe. And thus, the legend of the humans and the Glythari grew, a story of unity, resilience, and the indomitable spirit that could bridge even the vastest of distances between stars.